Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour, shalom, and thank you for bringing this event off. Thank you for bringing it into our lives. Norman, Angela, all of you. I think all of us as Canadians, as human beings, when we're at an interfaith event, an event devoted like this one to peace, to coexistence, we're in a special place. We're in our core because we know that this is something we do and we can do as well or better than any other group of people on the planet. And we have a duty to do it because we have this ability, because we have these freedoms, because we have this faith. And these faiths, each of us could tell a story like this, but my story is a living example of why interfaith dialogue is such a special conversation for Canada and a powerful tool for us. I have many Baptist preachers in my lineage. I have relatives in almost every Protestant denomination, certainly Roman Catholics among my ancestors. I grew up spending as much time in synagogues and at bar and bat mitzvahs as I did at any Christian ceremony because of friends in Toronto and Montreal. And in my professional career, certainly over the past decade plus, I spent more time in mosques than any other religious institutions because I was in Afghanistan. And then coming home, I was with Afghan Canadians and also Hindu Canadians and Buddhist Canadians. And we all discover a richness for our country by doing that, which is not visible if we don't do it. And so I want to talk about all of these things: peace, faith, as a person of faith, as a soldier of peace. That's what diplomats should be at their best. But above all, I want to talk about what Raheel mentioned. It really is the theme of the thoughts I had shaped for today. Who took away our tent? I think that is the question of our times. And it is the tent of Israel, of the covenant, as much as it is the tent of humanity and the peace that we know we can build, that we have built in many places, but which is still not built, which is lacking and indeed absent for too many today. So let me just say a few words on this theme. First, to understand our tent and our conviction and what we're doing today, who are we? Well, when I come to Montreal, I always think about the history of this great city. I know this month more people are thinking about it and celebrating it rightly. 375 years is nothing to dismiss in a continent, at least, where modern, commercial, urban civilization is still relatively young. And what do we think of at the foundation of Montreal? Well, faith. The faith that was present at its very foundation, the morality that came with that faith and is still profoundly rooted here. Commerce. This is Canada's largest city that is not a capital of provincial or national government. It is here on its scale with its vitality because of enterprise, because of business, and because of a commercial empire that stretches and still stretches, that stretched and still stretches across a continent. But this city is also here, and our country is here because of peace. It was La Grande Paix de Montréal in 1701 that in some ways began to unite what is today Canada under one crown, under one flag. And we are a product, this vast country, 10 million square kilometers only, of peace treaties negotiated over centuries, painstakingly. Yes, after wars on our soil, but treaties that brought us unbroken peace at a far earlier date than any other country of this size, than any other region in the world of this size anywhere else in the world. We have been at peace since 1815, since the Treaty of Ghent, since the War of 1812 ended. We have not known a civil war like the United States. We have not known the European wars, the colonial wars of the 19th century and the 20th century. We have not known the fighting end, the sharp end of the world wars on our territory. And of course, the Cold War. Its battles were fought elsewhere. So what is wrong today? From a Canadian perspective, well, we have seen the end of empires, benefited from the end of empires. That's really what the world wars were about. We've seen democracy and self-determination flourish in this country, institutions be built in this country that we are proud of and whose roots stretch back again over centuries. We have seen our borders secured, but remain open because the rules and the treaties governing them were respected. And we've seen the work of free markets in making us more prosperous and those with whom we've managed to trade more prosperous. But we're the exception, not the rule. There are more billions of people on this planet who live in countries that don't have agreed secure borders than who do not benefit from free markets and free trade and prosperity than who do. There are conflicts, active conflicts underway in South Asia, in the Middle East, because of these disputes, some fueled by faith, some fueled by pure politics. And Russia and China, in their different ways, are challenges to the value system on which we are based and the freedoms on which we have based our success. Think of just this issue of extremist, jihadist insurgency. Why is it there? It's not just because of these disputes, it's also because of our failure to act. We countries that have secure borders, that have prosperity, on behalf of those who don't. When was the Muslim Brotherhood formed? 1924. The year after, the Caliphate was dissolved under British pressure and with the full connivance of a secular Turkish state. When was Al-Qaeda formed? 1989, when the United States stopped funding a group of mujahideen in Pakistan who had a big head of steam up, willing to do more for their spiritual and temporal battle, but were dropped by their main sponsor and then turned around immediately to bite that hand that had fed them. When was the Islamic State founded? Within months of the last troops being pulled out of Iraq by President Obama, creating a vacuum. And so we have these benefits, but we also have these failings and these gaps and incoherences in our action. So how to fix the world? In a word, I don't think the solutions are so hard to reach. I didn't hear all of them in President Trump's speech. I heard an expression of will, but I don't think we will see the end of this violence in Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, or elsewhere without sanctions, political action backed by strong diplomacy, backed by political will against any state that backs a terrorist extremist group. We have seen it. We have seen the power of such action in recent years used against Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine, denied their complicity at first, said that these were self-supporting insurgents, separatists. It was a lie. They were exposed. They have faced sanctions. The threat to Ukraine is less. It's still there, but it has been contained. Why can we not do this in the case of other groups? We can. And what is our role in this? It is to be an advocate for those solutions. They're simpler and closer to hand than we think. It is to speak up for a planet that is the only one we have for the moment, and for its sustainability, for its wildlife, for its wilderness, for its balance, not just for a small range of issues, but for the big issues of how we live here together, 7 billion people and counting, and to speak up for a commerce, a global economy that is more fair and inclusive, where democracy and human rights are increasingly a reality and respected, where skills and education are on offer in some form for everyone, and where migration and immigration are managed properly, are talked about openly, are sources of strength and not demonization and polarization. And that, in my view, is what we should be doing in a new Canada. We need to rethink our history, rewrite our history from the perspective of all the groups that have not felt included until now. That has to include, first and foremost, Indigenous Canada. That has to include, first and foremost, the perspective of those who were before Samuel de Champlain and all the rest of us. We have to think in terms of a new economy, one that is for all of us, with opportunity, harnessing the talent of all, reaching new markets around the world, but finding a place for those who have too often been left behind as well. We need to think in terms of a new country, a country that continues its process of nation building, of refining institutions that are proven, that are admired, but which we all know can be so much better. And we have to lift our game, in my view, to play a bigger role in a troubled world, to be an example of a house united when others are divided, of action when others are inert or introvert or isolationist in their instincts. The opportunity that we can create in this country builds on the commerce that started in this city, the peace that we can champion in South Asia, the Middle East, and elsewhere will build on the success of our institutions. And the values that we will be taking into the world, which flow from our faith, will be those immediately that the world, the peoples of the world, are longing to hear, and hear from voices as varied as ours, voices as strong as ours, voices as compelling as we know Canadians can be. Peace, to my mind, is not a simple concept. For those who have it, take it for granted. It seems simple, but getting there is very hard. It's not just a question of voting. It's the rule of law. It's a culture of peace. It's good governance. But the ultimate barometer of whether a country has enduringly achieved peace and made its peace with the issues, whatever issues, divided it in the past, is that ability to keep the door open to dialogues like this, to people like Syrian refugees and those of many other backgrounds that we have welcomed into this country, and to the talent, the brain power, the wisdom, and the ambition of all the immigrants that make this country what it is today. Thank you very much for having me.